What up, YouTube? Ed WeskerGriff coming back with a video essay. This is a departure from what I normally do on the channel. I'm expecting this video to be 5 to 10 minutes. Just a little discussion points I want to bring up and ask you, the listener, a question. So for this Ask Yourself episode 1, one of the questions that has been bothering me internally throughout the pandemic and throughout this post-pandemic hobby landscape is, and this question is definitely skewed more towards collectors and not necessarily speculators or investors or however you want to categorize yourself in the hobby, but I want to ask collectors specifically, why do we listen to the hobby? And I know that might sound very arrogant and very elitist to be even asking a question like that. But I feel as long as I've been in the hobby, there's always been the top 20 cards, top 10 cards, the players with a lot of hype behind them, or going the safe route and picking up specific landmark players or GOATs in the respected sport, whether that be Wayne Gretzky, Michael Jordan, Babe Ruth, so on and so forth. I feel a lot of the times the hobby does not necessarily get it right. For example, a player of Willie Mays' caliber, legendary player, arguably one of the greatest baseball players of all time, for decades, he was an undervalued player in the hobby. Frank Robinson, another player, Hall of Famer, legendary player, one of the all-time greats, criminally undervalued. Some would even argue that Hank Aaron is another player. Some consider him to be the all-time home runs leader. Still undervalued. Now, we take a more modern approach. Whenever there's a product that comes out, there always seems to be a player, either one or two players per year, that seems to drive the product. In 2018, it was Ronald Acuna and Shohei Ohtani, and it's looking like the true steal of that year is Juan Soto, who went completely under the radar in the overall landscape of the hobby. You also have this in 2011 with Topps Update with Mike Trout. Mike Trout was not the guy. The hobby was not promoting Mike Trout in 2011 and 2012. He was completely under the radar. People were going after Jose Altuve, Anthony Rizzo. So, why does the hobby seem to get it wrong? Now, this might be a reflection not on the hobby, but the people that make up the hobby, because all this money is being pumped into the hobby at all-time record highs. We have historic highs for prices in the hobby, and some of that stuff is coming down. Now, how you spend your hobby dollars is up to you, but it just seems to me that we as collectors shouldn't be so shackled as to what the overall hobby is saying or what the hobby perceives as who you should go after or who should be valuable. Because we have seen for quite a while that the hobby doesn't evaluate players correctly. Now, again, I know that sounds insanely arrogant and that might sound very elitist, but I don't know. The last couple years, I've just been getting this feeling that the hobby overall doesn't evaluate, especially more in the modern and ultra-modern sense, the players correctly. I don't know if it's because the overwhelming majority of people aren't watching the games, and in the vintage side of things, if there's biases or some perceived slight which is keeping a deserving player's values down. if that makes sense. So tell me, guys, what you think. I've been mulling this over for quite a while. I've talked about it privately in conversations with people, and I don't want to sound like I have all the answers. I certainly don't, but it's just kind of more of an observation on my part, and I'm going to throw it out there on the channel to see what you guys think. And I always highly encourage feedback, as I would love to hear from you guys and see what you think on the topic. So ask yourself those following questions and let me know what you think. Have a great one, guys. Peace.